Friends, Shabbat Shalom. Rabbi Artson's going to speak in a minute. You're also welcome to do a second line, but closer if you do want to be a little closer. So whatever you feel comfortable with. Shabbat Shalom. I don't think we need to do a formal introduction, but as you've already learned from Rabbi Artson, we are very blessed to have him in our community on this Shabbat, and I'm going to turn it directly over so that we can learn and be in conversation.
Shabbat Shalom. So I want to give you a map for what I'm hoping to do. This has been an excruciatingly difficult couple years. I was going to say for the Jews, which is true, but it's actually been a really excruciatingly difficult couple years for any human being who's paying attention. But it's been particularly difficult time to be Jewish. So there are, regardless of your politics, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of American politics, Israeli politics, religious politics, we've managed to create an environment in which everyone feels bullied and misunderstood and marginalized and picked on. And for those of us who love Israel, it's been difficult in unique ways. We've watched as attacks focus not just on particular Israeli policies, but on the very existence of a Jewish state at all. And I just want to highlight for you how extraordinarily unusual that is. We take it for granted sometimes because it's done so often, but nobody's calling for the elimination of the United States, China, Russia, Manchuria, Argentina, England, France, or anywhere, except it's pretty routine for the people who are critical of Israel to call for its utter elimination. So I just want to highlight that that's not normal. We've also watched as people who are allegedly critical of Israel slide into subtle and overt anti-Semitism. Death to the Jews. In my city of Los Angeles, we had protests at UCLA where Jews were not allowed to walk across the campus because they were Jewish. They were not allowed to enter into their classrooms because they were Jewish. People would start off criticizing Zionism, and it would rapidly slide into overt, old-fashioned anti-Semitism. Swastikas, Nazi memorabilia, shouting out that Hitler was right, that they should finish the job. We've seen the complete conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, as people take what could be legitimate political disagreements and then rapidly abandon all distinction and slide into the kind of toxic anti-Semitism that has been the hallmark of Western civilization from its inception. It turns out that anti-Semitism, like racism, like sexism, like all the phobias, is not just a bug in the system, it's a feature of the system. And it's so deep that it looks normal. I was on a flight a couple months ago, sat next to an extraordinary woman, African-American woman, who had her 2 teenagers on the plane. And a mark of this woman's genius is she didn't let them sit near her. She bought them seats a couple rows back because she wanted to enjoy her flight. And I thought, now this is a woman who knows something. And we had a wonderful conversation. And at one point, she felt comfortable enough that she said to me, I want to ask you a question. Don't be offended. Why do people hate you so much? And I assume she didn't mean me personally. There's actually good reasons for that. She was asking, why do they hate my people so much? And I said to her, I'm not offended by the question, and I'll answer it, but you have to answer a question for me. Why do people hate you so much? And she got it. She said, oh, yeah, that's right, never mind. But what's striking to me in that conversation, really delightful human being, is no one alive in our culture hasn't been infected by racism and anti-Semitism. So I, as a Jew, can be very aware of anti-Semitism and still say and do racist things. And an African-American woman can be living with racism all the time and buy into anti-Semitic assumptions. None of us are pure here. And that, I think, is the first thing we have to admit, is we are all breathing an infected air. But it has been given permission to come out in ways that are brutal and dehumanizing, and we are struggling with that with this incredible sense of isolation that for some of us is new. I never thought as a teenager in the 70s that racism and anti-Semitism would be so prevalent when I was an old man. I'm waiting for one of you to say I'm not, but you missed your window. The anti-Semitism that is now infected not only the left but the right, and that speaks to millions of people through social media and from the highest offices in the land, I didn't expect that. I thought we were working on these things and that we would make more progress than we have. And apparently, we have created an environment in which the backlash has let them all come out from under the rocks. And in that context, I want to talk to you about Israel. And I want to tell you what's wrong with the way we talk about Israel. Whenever Jews gather to talk about Israel, we gather to yell about the headlines. So we're immediately focusing on politics, we're immediately focusing on ideology, and we start our conversations yelling. I don't want to talk to you about politics. I want to talk to you about why my love for Israel is deeper than politics. Because I think we don't have that conversation often enough. If all we talk about are policies and programs, all we're going to focus on is the areas where we rub each other raw. Imagine if that were the only way you talked about the United States. So I want to use that as an analogy to tell you what we're going to do today. I am a patriot. In my rabbinic office at work and at home, I have 3 flags on the shelf. I have the flag of the United States of America, which I love. I have a flag of the state of California, which I love. And I have a flag for the state of Israel, which I love. My love for the United States and California has nothing to do with thinking that America hasn't done some really awful things. It has, and it does. My love of this country has nothing to do with it being perfect. It has to do with it being the best alternative and a dream worth fighting for. The ideal of a nation whose governance comes from the people, by the people, for the people, and that it includes all people with equal rights, that is a vision that I will fight for to my death and wave that flag always. My love of Israel is deeper than any politics, deeper than any policy. There are many things that Israel has done and does that fill me with shame and anger. That has nothing to do with my patriotism for Israel. Israel will always be in my heart. So I want to spend some time reminding you why, and hoping that what I say to you will resonate with you regardless of where you sit on that left-right political lineup. It's what brings us together. So let's go. Ready? The first thing that ties me to Israel deeper than politics is the land itself. So I married into an Israeli family, and my in-laws were both Israeli. My mother-in-law from Tel Aviv, my father-in-law from Jerusalem. They met in Los Angeles. They always intended to move back. They're no longer alive, so I think it is safe to say that's not going to happen. But of their two children, my brother-in-law did move back and marry an Israeli, and he has raised Israeli kids. So one of the things my mother-in-law made me promise, because my job as running a rabbinical school means I get to go to Israel every year and I get to recruit people. It turns out if you want to recruit Americans for the American rabbinate, the best place to go to do that is Jerusalem.
Wow.
So I go. And my mother-in-law made me promise before she died that I would only fly El Al. I am the last American rabbi who only flies El Al. My colleagues all tell me how great it is to fly on British Air or United or American, or you can get a better deal, or you can get miles. And I keep saying, yes, but you don't have a deceased mother-in-law who will come and haunt you if you do that. There is nothing that American Airlines can offer me that would offset that. So I get on El Al, and they used to do this. They don't do this anymore because Israel is trying to be a grown-up. But when Israel admitted it was just a kid, you'd fly on El Al and you'd get to the place at the end of the flight where they would say, ladies and gentlemen, we are now about to see the coastline of the land of Israel. And then they would start playing schmaltzy Hevenu Shalom Alechem music, right? They don't do that anymore because someone from El Al flew on United and said, people don't clap when you land, and they don't play schmaltzy music. So we should be like an airline and do that too. So what I do, because I am, if nothing, if not stubborn, is when they say, we are now about to see the coastline, I start singing. And within a minute, the whole plane is singing Hevenu Shalom Aleichem. We don't need their recording to do that. But that coastline is coming home. I did not grow up in Israel. When I was a kid, one of the transformations in our lifetime, when I was a kid, the center of Jewish life was New York. Jewish plates that you put on the table for a nice nosh had bagels and cream cheese and maybe pictures of Brooklyn, right? But somewhere along the line, palm trees and pomegranates took over, and Brooklyn is no longer, sorry for those of you, how many people from Brooklyn here? My father is also from Brooklyn, grew up at the East Midwood Jewish Center, and he used to like to tell a joke that when all the people moved from Brooklyn to California, they raised the IQ in both places. I never got why he laughed at that joke. Okay, so that coastline is a homecoming. And I love the land. I love that when you land and you start to go towards Jerusalem, you literally make aliyah. You go up. You go up the mountains until you get to Mount Zion at the top. I love those pine-covered hills. I love the smell of the pine. I love walking in the Galil. It's so green. It's so extraordinary. I love the coastline. I love the ocean at Tel Aviv, which people swim next to. This is one weird Jewish thing. I don't get it. It's also in New York, so it's not apparently it's not just diaspora or Israel, but they have saltwater pools in Tel Aviv, so you can swim in pumped-in ocean water without going into the actual ocean. Why you would want to do that, no one has ever successfully explained to me, but apparently it's a thing.
The jellyfish come in?
They're not doing it because of jellyfish. They're doing it because they're Ashkenazic Jews. That's why they're doing it.
Excuse me, because they don't have water. They have a water problem, so they found another way.
No, I understand, but I'm not asking you why they fill the pool with ocean water. The ocean is right there. You know, in my country of California, when we go to swim in the ocean, we swim in the ocean. Just saying. I'm not judging, I'm just saying. I love that. I love the coastline. I love the north when you go to Haifa and you just see the diversity of the beauty of in Ein Gedi. You see the majesty of the desert and those caves and those hills and the ibex, like that land is my land. It's our land. You smell the scent of Jerusalem in the late afternoon, early evening, and you look at the red-brown glow of the sun on the stones, it lifts your soul. And related to that, point number 2, what connects me, is the people. So I married, I mentioned, into an Israeli family. Some believe that I went to rabbinical school because I was convinced that when my in-laws spoke in Hebrew, they were talking about me. What I discovered, having gone to rabbinical school to learn Hebrew, is they were, in fact, talking about me, and it's a good thing I learned the language. But I love their family. And Israel, for me, is specific people. My college roommate, Jeremy Benstein, who made Aliyah right out of college and now does work in environmental and Jewish ethics. Amazing work up in the north that he's Israel to me. My friend Judith Edelman Green, who is a rabbi who works with special needs teens and created the first national bar bat mitzvah program for people with special needs. Incredible, incredible. She's Israel to me. I got on an El Al flight, and ahead of me was a little tiny Jewish woman who I think if you just added water, she would become 6 feet tall. But she was in her concentrate form. And she was standing on a chair, opening the luggage area above her head, and it was filled with bags of bagelach, right? The little bagels they were going to serve us for breakfast the next morning, and she was busy throwing them on the floor. And there were a bunch of stewards and stewardesses screaming at her in Hebrew, and she, being Israeli, was screaming back. And you know who won that fight? Of course. She was going to put her luggage above her chair, and you do with the bagels what you want. And they did, because she was an unstoppable force, and I love that about Israelis. I love that the minute you get on the flight, you're in Israel. People will yell at you, but they will never lie to you. And even while they're yelling at you, they will protect you if you need protecting. They will take care of you, even if they're screaming at you. I love that. It feels like family blown up into a whole country, right? And I love those people. I love that sense of this is mine. You know, within the last couple years, Israel has become the world's largest center of Jewish population. Here's an interesting little experiment. In the last 50 years, 90% of the world's Jews now live in 5 cities. Call them out. New York, LA, wasn't it? Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa. Those 5 cities have 90% of the world's Jews, right? And That means that Israel is now our center, whether we personally live there or not. How many of you have family in Israel? Look at that. Look at that. That wouldn't have been true 50 years ago, but that is true now. Right? Israel has become our homeland, really. It's not an abstraction. It's real people who we adore. And then point number 3, what connects me to Israel is the culture. So here I want to tell a couple stories. One, every Friday night, I, like many of you, bless my children with Birkat Kohanim, ancient prayer found in the book of Numbers. So I was in Israel at the Israel Museum, and I was going through the archaeology section. And you know, the archaeology section, I don't mean to offend, but the archaeology section is generally displays of broken jewelry and junk. Right? So if you have one earring and not two, don't throw it out. In 2,000 years, that will be in the archaeology display of American Cleveland. It's going to be worth something. Hold on to it. Broken mirrors, broken pottery, combs that are missing some of the combs, right? All of this stuff, just give it time, will be worth a lot. And people will travel to see it. So I'm looking through the archaeology stuff, which is an odd sort of thing because you're really just looking at broken junk. And I come across a little tiny silver amulet, about the size of your thumb, hammered paper thin, and on it are etched the words of Birkat Kohanim. And it was discovered near what is now St. Andrew's Church, just outside of the old city, in a first century tomb called Ketef Chinom. And it was wrapped around some guy's neck when he was buried in the reign of King Hezekiah, around 800 BCE. And I started to cry because I thought, who in the world has a continuous culture that goes back 3,000 years? We pray to the same God in the same language with the same words. My kids know that as the prayer they are blessed with. Every year at the high holidays, the Kohanim get up on the bima at the service that I lead, and they bless the congregation with those words. And that roots me to the land. This was a prayer that some ancient Israeli wore around his neck into eternity. Do you know how lucky we are? If you go to Greece, most American tourists don't care about anything that has happened in Greece in the last 2,000 years. I don't want to see your Byzantine churches. Who cares? I'm not interested in your agriculture. That's your business. I want to see old stuff. I want to see the stuff in Greece that you no longer pray to. Right? I go to the Acropolis. No one in Greece is praying to Athena anymore. No one is praying to Ares or Zeus, right? They're dead. And we don't want to see the living. We say to living Greeks, get out of the way. I want to take a picture of the dead stuff. And the Greeks know that. But you go to Israel, same God, same language, and not only do you go see the old stuff, you want to see the wine factory, and you want to see the art colony, and you want to see the Kabbalistic center. You want to see it all because we are a continuous culture. That doesn't happen in humanity, but it happened to us. Right? Not only that, but the books that are the breath of our people's life, the Tanakh, the Mishnah, Midrash, Piyutim, these are all products of the land of Israel. And as if that isn't enough, contemporary Israel has produced novelists and poets that are world class. You can buy Israeli fiction in translation in any American bookstore because it's great. This is a living people. And the miracle of an ancient language that was a scholarly language for 1,000 years and is now again the language of school children. How many times in human history has that happened? Once, counting us. It's astonishing. If I were to tell you that they have discovered near Cleveland a community of Hittites who once a week bring out the ancient Hittite books and pray to the ancient Hittite gods, you know that the New York Times and the Washington Post would be on that. CBS and NBC, even Fox News would be wanting to cover that. That would be astonishing. And there are no communities of Hittites or Hivites or Jebusites or Girgashites. They are gone. There's only one little ancient Canaanite tribe, and it's us. It turns out there is an ancient Hebrew place where the Hebrews gather once a week or more, and they bring out the ancient Hebrew books and they pray to the ancient Hebrew God. And the only reason that the news media isn't flying in to film it is because it's happening all over the place, so nobody realizes how incredibly unlikely it is. It's a miracle. And we are, every time we gather, a portable version of Israel coming together. The biblical and Mishnaic word for Jew is B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. And you are B'nai Yisrael. You are the children of Israel. Okay, I lied. I have to say one political thing. My 3 non-political reasons for loving Israel: the land, the people, the culture. Now I want to say one more thing. Forgive me, I'm going to be political. The reason Zionism succeeded is not because it's a great idea. It succeeded because the world wouldn't let us be. Jews, when they had the choice between going to Israel or coming to America, they came to America in droves. The only thing that stopped them from coming to America was a Republican Congress, which shut down the doors of immigration. And then the number of people making Aliyah went up. Right? During World War II, before World War II, they tried to get out. They tried to go to Argentina, Britain, France, America. They all said no. It turns out we have to have a nation of our own, because all the nations we count on, we can't count on all the time. And when the going gets tough, they say tough. So all those people who made Aliyah, some of them did it for ideological fervor, but the vast majority of them moved there because they had to go somewhere quick. And that was the place they could go. And there are still a lot of people who want to kill us. And as long as there are people who want to kill us, our love of Israel is a necessity, not a choice. And it is stronger than any ideological discomfort. 2 last stories. Number 1, a couple years ago, in the Dead Sea area, in Qumran, in Gedi, they found a bag of 2,000-year-old date pits. And they took them to a bunch of botanists at the nearby university, and they managed miraculously to germinate a handful of them. So there is now at Kibbutz Keturah an old male date tree named Methuselah. And there are 5 female date trees. My favorite is the name Tamar, which means date tree. And they have been producing Judean dates which have not been tasted by human tongues for 2,000 years. And there's something. So the dates you're used to, the Persian dates, are the big, thick, rich kinds. They're delicious. I'm in no way criticizing them. We grow them in California too. But the Judean date is much more chewy and less oversweet. And it was, in the ancient Roman Empire, a delicacy. It was imported in southern Spain, in France, along the whole Mediterranean coast, in Rome. It was what rich people liked to have for dessert. And then it disappeared. I don't think it's a coincidence that when the Jewish people returned to the land, so did the Judean date. And you can now get it. I have the sad news of telling you, you cannot get it online. I tried. You have to go to Kibbutz Keturah. And they sell it in little tiny boxes that look like Tiffany boxes and cost like Tiffany boxes. And there are 3 dates, and they limit how many boxes you can buy. You can buy 1. But I have a really good friend who went to Israel for a wedding, and he brought me back Judean dates. And those dates blend everything I love. They blend history, they blend ancient Judaism, they blend Zionism, biology, science. It's all there in one delicious bite. You can eat Zionism as dessert. Second story I want to tell you. I grew up in a very not religious home. I grew up an atheist, and by the way, I will tell you that growing up an atheist in San Francisco is awesome. There's lots to do that now that I'm under the yoke of the law, I cannot avail myself of any longer. But I found God and religion in college. And one of my friends asked me if I could help him make a minyan. I didn't know what a minyan was, but I'm pretty resourceful. I figure I can make anything, so I agreed. And then he took me to this room where the men were sitting on one side and the women were sitting on the other side, and the men were wrapped in leather. And I'm from San Francisco, so I'm used to that. Although I discovered that the meaning was different here. These people were wearing these leather boxes that I had never seen before because I grew up a pretty assimilated Jew. And he explained to me what tefillin were, and I thought that was really cool. So when I went home for winter break, I told my grandmother about these leather boxes I'd seen. And my grandmother went to the universe's most magical spot, which is a grandmother's closet. I don't know how you guys put in there what you put in there, but there is always magic in there. And she went back and was rummaging around like Voldemort and, in some or Hogwarts-y scene. And she pulls out this brown paper bag, and in it are her father, my great-grandfather's tefillin, which I now wear every morning. So I'm now the dean of a rabbinical school, and I get to stay in a hotel that has a view of the old city walls. And I get up in the morning and I get on my merpeset and I put on my great-grandfather's tefillin, and I'm davening looking at a Jewish Jerusalem. And I realized that there was nothing in that picture that wouldn't have seemed to my great-grandfather absolutely messianic. His great-grandson is a rabbi. He's still using tefillin. He's in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is governed by Jews in an independent Jewish state. There is nothing in 1890, that my great-grandfather would have heard in that sentence and didn't think was crazy. Impossible, in your dreams. And yet, here it is. We are living the dream. and we are letting our vision drift. So I'm here to remind you, yell about politics all you want. That's what democracies do. But as you're yelling at each other about politics and policies and politicians, remember that there is something that ties us to Israel that goes far deeper than any of the politics and will be with us long after the political arguments have subsided. Hold on to the land, the people, the culture, and the dream.
Thank you, Rabbi Artson. I think we have time for a couple of questions. If you raise your hand, if anyone has a question, I'll make my way to you.
It's a question, but I'm going to frame it more as a background. So here in this city, my husband has a colleague who is Zoroastrian. So the Zoroastrian community in this world is 20,000. Not maybe quite as old as the Jews, but they're still here. He observes all the traditions they have. My understanding about them is they do not accept converts, and they do not accept intermarriage in the most orthodox manner. So, in a sense, in talking about, and obviously they lost their country, though my understanding is that Iran at some point had accepted some of them back. Yeah. So then the question is the difference between the Jews and the Zoroastrians. Is that element of us being so many people isn't just a genetic aspect, perhaps? And then
So I want to answer that, not specifically what's the, lay up the differences between Zoroastrianism and Judaism. It's a broader question than that. It's if you recognize the miraculousness of Jewish not only surviving but thriving, what do you see that, what do you attribute that to? And obviously something as complex as that has many causes, but I'm a rabbi, so I want to boil it down. I think Jewish survival, first and foremost, is a feature of the fact that God isn't done with us, and that we are the eruption of the divine into human history. I want to hasten to say we're not better than other people, and God doesn't love Jews more than God loves Gentiles. But God does have a special covenant with Judaism, and Jews are indispensable to Judaism. So I believe strongly in the chosenness of the Jews, not as a theological postulate, but as a historical fact. And I think I could make that case if you want to have me back sometime. So that's number one. Number two, Moses wasn't wrong when he noticed how incredibly stiff-necked we are. You know, other more reasonable people throw in the towel. There was a great cartoon in the New Yorker many years ago. It showed a Christian knight lying on the ground and a Muslim crusade warrior with a knife to the Christian's throat. And the Christian is saying, "Tell me more about this Islam of yours. I'm very interested." That's what normal people would say, but we're not normal. We just keep saying, nope, not doing it, and then popping up somewhere else. So we pack our bags and we move. And that irreducible quality of the Jewish people is both aggravating and why we're still here. But I do think the most reasonable thing, we are not biologically different or better than the rest of humanity. we have been chosen for a purpose, and that's the only thing that our diet isn't different, really, and our cuisine isn't different, and there is no such thing as Jewish architecture, or, our literature sounds like they're like what's different is our covenant and our loyalty to that covenant. Of course. I hope you have something that counts the miles, the steps right now.
You said that you grew up in an atheist household, and you began your Jewish reconnection, if you will, in college when you were asked to join a minyan. I was thinking about that and wondering what was it about that minyan, or what was the process that you went through that brought you to the rabbinate?
Okay, I'm going to do the short version of that question, because that, is basically my whole life. I grew up in an atheist family. We were always proudly Jewish, but not really literate and certainly not observant. When I was in college, I had always been interested in ethics, and it never made sense to me if ethics is just what more people vote for than against. If ethics is just a human creation, then I had no way of saying something was good or bad. I just could say more people liked it or disliked it. There were more Germans than Jews, so then the Holocaust isn't bad if it's just consensus. But I knew that was wrong. And in college, I had two roommates who were evangelical Christians. One in particular was one of the finest people I've ever met. And he got me thinking about religion, and I knew I couldn't believe his story. So I went to talk to the Hillel Rabbi, and he got me to agree to go to services for 2 months, because he said less than that, you'll just be worried about, do I step forward, do I step back, why do I sit here, do I sing here? Like, you need to go long enough that it becomes normal so you can decide if you like it or not. And then he gave me a book by Franz Rosenzweig, who is a German Jewish existentialist, to read. And I fell in love. And he said, believing in God isn't something you decide, it's something you try on and see if it works. And I fell in love with God. Now, I will admit to you, it could have been hormonal. The same semester that I fell in love with God, I met then Ilana Shavit, who 42 years later remains my wife and the love of my life most days. So it could be hormones, but I am nothing if not faithful. So here I am, same woman, same God, all these years later. That did not translate into a decision to go to the rabbinate. It translated into a decision to study and learn, but I was going to be a politician. Ooh. I was the president of the Harvard Democrats. I worked for the ACLU as a lobbyist. I was an intern one summer for U.S. Senator Alan Cranston. I was an LBJ intern for Congressman Burton. And then my junior year, I was an intern for the Assemblyman from San Francisco, Willie Brown. Willie Brown's a remarkable African-American politician originally from Texas, who went on to become the Speaker of the California State Assembly. And during my time with him, he offered to pay me retroactively and offered to hire me for when I graduated. So I went back to Harvard my last year, knowing I was coming back to work for Willie, and that I wanted to try to build a base in San Francisco. The goal was to be the senior senator from California. And then, when I retired, to go to JTS for Rabbinical School for the Learning. I know, it sounds stupid now. But it was the plan. And then I realized, working for Mr. Brown, that I couldn't stand the life of a politician. I didn't make a single friend in the 2 years I was working for him, because when you have lunch with someone, you either win or lose the lunch, right? Winning is you got more information than you gave away, and there was always a loser. And people demanded of him that he show up all the time. So the man had no private life to speak of because he was constantly on. And even people who he put in the budget for 19 years, if he said, could I have a night off and not go to your banquet, would say, no, you have to be there. So I realized that wasn't a life. I just didn't have a backup plan. And Ilana, who, this is not an attractive trait, I will tell you, in a spouse, is never wrong. It's not pretty. And she is not only an Israeli, but she is a federal prosecutor, which means I haven't won an argument in my entire married life. And she said to me, this is ridiculous. You don't know what life is going to bring. So if you want to go to rabbinical school and learn, you should do that now and not wait. Good point, right? So I had a week until the deadline. Rabbinical schools had deadlines back in the day. And so I spent the week at the taxpayer's expense going to work in Willie Brown's office and typing up my rabbinical school application. I will tell you, I know this is being recorded, but we'll have to white this out. You needed a letter of recommendation from your employer, so I asked Mr. Brown if he would write a letter of recommendation, and he said, yes, go ahead. Because I wrote many of his letters. So he wrote a truly beautiful. It's amazing how well he captured me. And then I gave him the letter to sign, and he said, you forged my signature, go ahead and sign it. So it may be that JTS actually has good cause for revoking my ordination. Perhaps, I'll leave that to them. But that's what got me to rabbinical school. I will tell you that my time in politics taught me as much about being a rabbi as anything I have ever done. Mr. Brown was a brilliant teacher and a brilliant politician, and I use his teachings every day. I may have silenced them. Of course.
So I had an opportunity to study in your rabbinical school many years ago, long before you were a dean, but you were my teacher there 28 years ago. And I also studied at JTS. And at that time, I could tell that there were differences between the two rabbinical schools. What are they like now?
Well, I want to be fair, so I will tell you the biggest difference between the two schools is the dean of one of them is extraordinarily charismatic and good-looking. Next question. No, I'm really not going to answer that question. Next question.
We're going to give Cheryl the last question.
Rabbi, I'm verklempt. I just wanted to say that this was such a badly needed, uplifting session for me, who is living constantly in semi-trauma and defending things and such. Thank you so very much.
You are welcome. Can I give you all a blessing? Yes. So listen, here's Avinu Shabashamayim, Heavenly Father. Your children are carrying such a heavy burden. We are told in the world that we only have a provisional right to exist, that we exist so long as we conform to somebody's standards of what's okay, that we don't have the right to make the same mistakes others do. We don't have the right to assert our own distinctiveness as others do. We find ourselves surrounded by friends who make us uncomfortable and enemies who terrify. A world in which people who we expect to be allies betray us, and those who we did not expect friendship from standing with us, sometimes for the wrong reasons. Help us, Holy One, to remember the source of our strength is always you, only you, and that the Torah, the lifeline that you have thrown to us, has kept our people afloat and thriving in worse times than this. And if we do our job right, will be the legacy that helps our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren float in their day. Help us to be worthy of that unspeakable privilege and gift. Amen.
Amen. Amazing. Thank you.